Welcome to Amplify, the personal brand business show. Today on the show, Bob is speaking with Sean Osborne.
By having an email list, you control it. It's your asset. You own that. No one can take it away. You could down my website. You can ban me from every social media platform. You could take away every single one of my programs. And within a week, I could have something going out to my community and make $20,000, $30,000 and be okay. I'm okay. My company is my list. My company is my list. So I treat them that way.
Hi there and welcome back to the Personal Brand Business Show. My name is Bob Gentle and every week I speak with incredible people who share their secrets to building, marketing and monetizing their expertise and the mindset you need for your business to grow and thrive. If you're new to the show, then while you still have whichever device you're using in your hand, take a second to subscribe. That way you won't miss a single thing and you will make Bob happy. So this week, I mentioned we're talking about mindset from time to time. This week, we're speaking to my very own mindset Gandalf. Sean Osborne, welcome to the show.
Bob, thank you for having me on the show again. It is fantastic talking with you. You're one of my favorite people to sit down and talk with because we do see a lot of things very, very much the same and in alignment with each other. So both from a business standpoint and I think really from a personal standpoint as well.
Well, I agree. I think we have a lot in common. We see the world in similar ways. And I often say, I'm really, really excited to speak to people at the beginning of a podcast interview because I always am. But speaking to you is always particularly exciting because the reality is if we're going to achieve anything in life, it has to happen in our head first before it happens in the real world. And a lot of people underestimate that there is method to this. And there's very few people who manage to simplify the synthesis of all the wisdom that's out there in the world that we can actually apply to our lives and help us orient it around that information that's out there as effectively as you can. So I am pumped to have you here.
Oh, thank you, man.
So for the listener who's meeting you for the first time, can you maybe just start by telling us a little bit about who you are, where you are, what you do?
Sure, absolutely. And, I don't want to go too deep because I can literally spend hours talking about this. So to make it brief, but yeah, so both from a mindset standpoint and from a business standpoint, marketing, all the stuff that you do. And the reason it means so much to me and the reason that it's helped me push forward and say, I really want to be able to talk about this, to teach other people how to do some of these things because of where I came from. So at 15, I was homeless. I was on my own. I was the poster child for don't do drugs. It was not a good place to be. And several things had happened. And, again, I was living on my own out on the streets. And by the time I was 30, I had started a multimillion-dollar tech company that I actually took public and actually sold before the age of 30. And obviously, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened within that time frame. In the context of this, I made decisions. I did things that pushed me forward. I did things that pushed me towards success. And for the longest time, even after I sold my company, I thought I was a fraud. I thought I was a fake. I thought I just got lucky. I thought, you know what, it's never going to happen again. And it wasn't until a few years after I sold my company that I started really getting into mindset development and how we do the things we do. And someone gave me the book Think and Grow Rich. I'm like, yeah, great. And it sat on my shelf for a while, but I finally read it, and it was like that's when it actually hit me that is what I actually did. I actually did this. You don't need the book Think and Grow Rich to be successful. I mean, in whatever it is that you want, and not money, but in relationships, in your health, whatever it is, you don't need that book. It's just the step. It's just the shortcut on here's how a whole bunch of people did it. Here's the commonalities of a whole bunch of people who became successful. And I read that book and I started to think, wow, the things that I did for those 15 years that took me from being homeless to being financially successful in my relationships. Next week, I'm celebrating my 35th wedding anniversary with my wife. It's like, so all of those things I tie back and I look at Think and Grow Rich and just the philosophies within that book. And it's like, wow, I did those things. I created I manifested the life that I wanted. And until I understood how that happened and I saw the steps, I'm like, okay, this isn't an accident. This isn't, I just didn't get lucky. There's a reason for this. And when I got to that point, I was like, wow, that means I can do this again and again and again. And now I can also teach it because it changed my life so dramatically, literally from obviously homeless to, being fairly successful. It's like, it changed my life completely to be able to do that.
So for the listener who hasn't read Think and Grow Rich, obviously I don't want you to start a book reading, but what are some of the core principles in that book?
Here's the funny thing. Think and Grow Rich is one of those books that a lot of people talk about because it's helped so many different people. It's like it's one of the books they talk about, but it's in literally hundreds and hundreds of books have the exact same thing within it. They're just said a different way. Even from business books to self-help books, they all talk about the same, really the same thing. And it's really having, number one thing is making the decision that you need to change, making the decision that you want to be successful at something, whether it's in a relationship, in a career, in sports, you have to make a decision that I want to do this. And you have to be able to, have a desire to do that. And there's ways to build the desire. There's ways to build the flame to help you stay motivated, to help you do it. But it's all about making the decision. It's all about being persistent. It's all about having a true vision of your future. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of these books talk about is creating this vision of your future. And what I teach when I talk about it, it's creating a memory for your future. That day, you need to have a memory in your mind of that, the way it smelt, the way it looked, the way it tasted, as if it was a true memory of what you want your life to be. Because your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and what's in your, what you're thinking. It does not know the difference. So you're actually building the neural network to have those things that you're wanting to manifest.
I remember I got my copy of Think and Grow Rich I was very early in my career. I had a client who was a fish merchant, and he was probably the most successful person I know. Every time I came to his house, I would leave with a bottle of wine to do some work. But this day he said, Bob, let me give you this. And he went to his bookshelf and pulled out his own copy of Think and Grow Rich, which was really old, and gave me this. He said, this is what you need. And I didn't read it for years. And then eventually I read it and I thought, now I understand. We've gone enough about that. Where I'd like to go now is setting this vision or this memory of the future is great, but a lot of people aren't necessarily as daring with that vision, or they don't necessarily give themselves permission to think big.
Yeah.
And this is why I love what you're doing now with the Tony Robbins organization and the NLP, is limiting beliefs are a big problem. And a lot of people don't really realize that they're holding themselves back simply through lack of vision. How do you help people past that? Or what would you say to anybody who's listening thinking, that's fine, having a big vision of the future, but I can't, I just have to make my mortgage payments. How do you move from just struggling to make mortgage payments to the grand vision?
Yeah. And so that's actually one of the biggest questions that I get is I don't have a passion for something big. I don't have a passion. For one, we need to go back to being daydreamers. I don't care who you are, what you do, spend time every day just daydreaming, being a kid again, because that's what shows you, if we could all go back to that time when we were an actual kid and we were daydreaming, think about it. When you were a kid, at least for me, I didn't just dream. I just didn't say, hey, I want to be Superman. Right. I actually put a fake cape on my back or a bedspread on my back. I ran around with my arms up. I literally became Superman for that time. That is being, that is what it takes. You've got to be a child. You've got to be able to daydream and do those things. Two, you've got to take action. And that's the biggest thing is we think of things and we're always bass-ackwards. We always say, well, when I get the time, I'll look at doing that. When I have the money, the resources, when I know the people, when I do these things, then I'm going to go and I'm going to do these things. And it's completely bass-ackwards. We've got to go and do things That's how we learn about the people. That's how we get the skills. That's how we do the things, is by taking the action. The way I always recommend people to do is go deep into many different rabbit holes. Anything that interests you, just start doing things, listening to podcasts, going to conferences, doing whatever it is, even remotely, to wherever you want to go, whatever industry you're in, whatever you're trying to do. Because what that does, that action does, that starts giving you clarity on those ideas of, oh, that's something I could do. So 6 years ago, I remember being at a conference. And again, it wasn't even my conference. I was just there to support someone. And I saw a speaker up there that motivated me. And I said, I want to do that. So that became a big vision for me, a big inspiration vision, saying, I want to do that. Had nothing to do with what I was doing, but I was taking action. I was being in places, I was doing things, and those things generated ideas to say, hey, Sean, that's something you want to do. So it's just taking action. Action always breeds the clarity that we need for moving forward.
I think an analogy I often find myself using when people ask questions like, how can I find a niche, or how can I move forwards in my business with some kind of purpose? That when you're standing still, it's very difficult to see purpose. It's very difficult to have any kind of vision.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like these computer games when you're looking down from above and the board is dark. And it's only when you start moving around that the board lights up. I've found that to be very true. For the longest time, I was paralyzed by, I don't know what my purpose is. I know what I'm doing isn't lighting me up. But it's exactly what you said. It's relationships become catalysts for ideas. We only meet mentors when we're moving. And opportunity only comes when you walk into it. It doesn't walk into you.
Yep.
That's a really important thing. Limiting belief is a different animal. I think people can daydream sometimes, but we're accustomed to this, especially in the UK. In the US, I think people are encouraged to have a grander vision sometimes, but in the UK and Europe, don't you have any big ideas? Don't you think you're going to get too fancy? And this is operating at an unconscious level. And how do you move people beyond false modesty towards thinking, you know what, you could be the number one. You could be amazing. And it's all right.
Yeah, it's why not you? And it's, so to me, that is not something that happens overnight. That is something that happens over time. And again, I think it's with action and doing things that you start getting rid of those limiting beliefs. But to me, anything that we think is a realistic goal. So in other words, people don't think big. They think, okay, realistically, I can do this. That is just a limiting belief of what you think you can do. That is just a limiting belief. Anytime someone says, well, this is what I think I should do. I mean, this is big enough. This is, I don't think I can go any bigger than that. That's just your own limiting beliefs, thinking that you can't go any bigger. And I always tell people, you are the most powerful being in this world. You have the capability of virtually anything you could possibly imagine. If you have a big, grand idea, you would not be able to have that big, grand idea if you were not capable of doing it. So if you have this big, audacious thing, it's like, and you start saying, well, I'll never be able to do that. You would not be able to have that big, audacious goal, that vision, if you were not capable of actually achieving it.
Everybody's heard the phrase, your income rises to the level of the 5 people you spend most time with. I've also found that to be true of ambition, of appreciation of what's possible, of vision. And it really does bring us to this question of the mastermind. A lot of people, their friendship circle, their business circle is what's happened to them by accident. And being intentional about the people that you spend time around can have a profound effect.
Yeah.
I've found that. I think that's a big part of you and your work. Do you maybe want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and there's actually science behind that. So you hear Jim Rohn, you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with. Tony Robbins, there's power in proximity. All these people are saying the same thing, just in different ways. But there is a thing called your mirror neurons. And it's one of the things that I teach on. They're fantastic little neurons in your mind that actually see you. You have a virtual reality simulator going all the time in your mind. That's what the UOS book is about. You have a VR going all the time. So your mirror neurons, when you see or hear anything, your mirror neurons are kicking off in the background as if you were doing the same thing. So if you see me get up on stage, your mirror neurons in the background are sitting there having you go up on stage. You're feeling those feelings. You're seeing those things. When you watch sports on TV, when you watch someone playing basketball, your mirror neurons actually see you dribbling the ball. They actually see you. You're actually experiencing their life as they see it. And again, what our mind sees, it doesn't, our subconscious, it doesn't know reality from what's not reality, what's real and what's not real. It just sees what it sees. So when your mirror neurons are kicking off and it's seeing you, if you hang out with these, these people that are inspiring, that are goal getters, that are these powerful people, your mind, you literally are living as if you were doing the same thing. That, to me, that is the science behind why Jim Rohn says that, why Tony Robbins says that. There is a scientific reason why who we hang out with is who we become. And it's just a miraculous thing to look at. And again, they're just now really tapping into those things, like the mirror neurons. But if you look at someone who's very empathetic, you see something on TV and you actually can experience it, and you literally start to cry when you see these things. That's your mirror neurons. It doesn't know that that's not happening to you. You start to cry. So the people who are the most empathetic people, they have very powerful, very active mirror neurons going on.
That's really interesting. I've heard of mirror neurons before, but I'd never had them put in context like that. This would explain, this is a little comedy aside, whenever I go on holiday or vacation anywhere, if I spend long enough there, I'm going to start speaking in the local accent, thinking in the local accent.
Yep.
And it's a lot like, if anybody listening has experienced VR, I was startled by your body cannot tell the difference. Your body, it will respond to VR jumping out an airplane the same way that it would if you were actually doing it. I was really surprised by that. And that must be the mirror neurons that you describe.
Yeah.
What's interesting is to imagine the compounding effect of that over time with other people. I often speak about creator confidence, that people know that creating content is really important in their business, and yet most people don't identify as content creators. A strategy for that is spend time around content creators because it normalizes it.
Yeah.
This is just a tiny slice of the potential of these mirror neurons when you actually spend a bit of time thinking about it.
Yeah. And when you go a little bit deeper, this whole thing started off with like mastermind groups and stuff like that. So not only so to me, I love mastermind groups. I love getting around core people who are where I want to be, which is how we met. We met through masterminds, right? And it's like, not only does it activate your mirror neurons, and you obviously become that, average of the average of the 5 people you hang out with, but you also have the expectations of that group. So that when I hang out with people who are really successful in whatever it is, again, it doesn't have to be money. People always say when you're successful, they always go to money, but it doesn't have to be money. If you hang out with, if you and your spouse hang out with people who are divorced, a whole bunch of couples who are divorced, I hate to tell you this, but you're more likely to get divorced. If you hang out with people who have been in steady marriages, you're going to be more likely to be in a steady marriage. It's just the way it is. So the expectations from my mastermind groups are higher expectations that I put on myself. So it's a double whammy. Not only is your body seeing yourself as being successful, but you're also getting the expectations from the group that you need to be better. Not better, but that you can do that. My expectations for my group is, Sean, why can't you do that? Of course you can do that.
So I'd like to talk about your book a little bit, because we've hinted that it's there. I think it's not available yet. It's going to be available. When is it available?
It's supposed to be by the end of this year.
Okay.
So by January of 2025. Wow. Time's flown by.
So one thing I'm really clear on is that when you grow, your business will grow. There is a direct correlation between business growth and personal growth. I learned very quickly through my podcast, actually, that most of the really successful people I know, and there are diverse ways to define success, they're not the people now that they were at the beginning. They're very different people. And if you take a Tony Robbins, for example, if you were to parachute me into his business, I would destroy it in a week, because I'm not the person that I would need to be to make that work. perhaps that's a limiting belief. But how can we, and I guess this is what the book is about, but how can we take that personal growth in hand? And yeah, what's the book about?
So the UOS book is basically a guide to how we operate. Again, mirror neurons, that's part, that's stuff that's within the book. Of course, it's not a techie book, but I've been in technology for 35 years. The company that I talked about that I took public was a technology company. So I think like a computer in ways. The book is kind of a manual of how we operate, why we do the shit we do, how we associate things, why we're triggered by things. It's basically we operate just like a computer, and we can reprogram ourselves just like a computer. If you want a different program to run, we can actually just download that program in a way that allows us to run that program instead of the virus, the crap program that we might be running right now. And that's what the book is about.
And I guess for anybody listening, most of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we feel quite small. We feel quite powerless. And the idea of thinking big, that's one thing. Acting big is a whole nother thing. What advice would you have for anybody who's thinking, you know what, I know I can do better? What would be an ABC for identifying limiting beliefs, defining a new vision for yourself, and most importantly, planning for and taking action?
So there's a whole bunch of steps that you could take to do that. And you mentioned acting big, and I think that's probably one of the biggest steps that you can do. And it's easy to do. It's acting, some people will say act as if. Some people, if anybody that's listening right now, if you ever say or have ever said fake it until you make it, drop that. Don't ever say that. There's no such thing as faking it till you make it, because it does you absolutely no good. You have to act as if. And again, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's reality and what's not. So when you act a different way, even if it's for 10 minutes, whatever it is, you can start reprogramming. That's part of how you reprogram your mind to say, this is what I want. This is the new program I'm downloading. And there's so many ways to do it. So for instance, if one of the things that I used to do when I was before I got successful, I had some mentors, and I noticed some of the things that they did. So one of my mentors used to tip extremely well when we would go out to lunches and stuff. He would just, no matter what the service was, didn't matter. With a smile, he'd put this huge tip on. And in his mind, he's like, well, luckily I have money, right? So there's just little things like that. So from that point forward, anytime I went out to dinner, to lunch, I would put a very big tip, and I would just in my mind think, luckily I'm rich. And it makes you feel, and it makes you, so you are taking the action as if you were the person that already had a lot of money. And it goes down to being multimodal in how we see things. In other words, we can do affirmations. I want to be wealthy. Whatever your affirmation is, right? That's only using 2 of your senses, right? What you say, what you hear. It's like, it's very, it's not multimodal. Multimodal meaning more than one sense. But when you act as if, when you act big, you're using everything and your 6th sense as well. So you're using, what you see, what you smell, all these things around you, and that is a much more powerful affirmation than just saying an affirmation. You're actually acting the affirmation. Steve Harvey recently came out and he said, just once, and I love this quote. He goes, just once, upgrade to first class on your next flight. Just once. Don't break the bank. If it's going to put you in major debt, don't do it. But just once, upgrade to first class, because once you do it, your mind is going to know that you absolutely loved it. Your mind, your subconscious is going to know that this is what you want. And it's going to find ways in the back, behind the scenes, that you don't even know. It's putting all these things together for you. It's, you're manifesting, whether you like it or not, you're manifesting your future, good or bad. So when you do these things, when you act big, when you act these things, you're telling your subconscious and you're reprogramming yourself for those things to happen again.
I think manifesting is one of these words that has the potential to become toxic. But when people understand how the unconscious works, it's a very powerful thing. And you can enlist it or you can be used by it. And I think that's extremely good advice.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people, when I realize that everything I have good or bad, was manifested. And once we take responsibility of that, that is such a huge game changer. If I'm out driving and someone rear ends me, I manifested that. And I know, and when I first tell people things like that, they're like, you are crazy. That's just crap that happened. It's like, no, I'm responsible for everything. I could have left 5 minutes earlier. I could have done all these things. I manifested that in one way or the other. I might have been looking at something, been this cause, maybe in the back of my mind, I didn't really want to make that call or go to a meeting. This might be the universe's way of saying, okay, here you go. You're not going to that meeting now. You've been in an accident and now you're late. You're not going to that meeting. Everything that happens in our lives, good or bad, has been manifested by us. Everything. And once we realize that, that's when we know, oh crap, every negative thought I have, everything that I'm doing, that's manifesting my future. I'm creating my own reality on everything that I do.
So I would like to have a segue, and manifesting is perhaps a good way to do it, because one of the things that piqued my attention was a social post where you were talking about two things. Number one, growing a very large email list. And number two, talking about email marketing in ways that I don't see very many people talking about.
Yeah.
Where you're talking about email community rather than email marketing. And I really liked that. And I really wanted to find out a bit more about that. So what should I be asking you at this point?
Really? So one, why did I create an email list? That's, one of the first things that's asked is why did you start creating, how did you know that you needed to start creating an email list for what I wanted to do? So my big vision for my future, 5-6 years ago, was I wanted to be able to have complete time freedom and to do whatever I wanted to do and still make the living that I wanted to make. Retired. This is my vision. I want to be able to be sitting on a beach and still make the living that I need to make, that I want to make, while helping people. It's all about giving to people. It's all about helping people move forward. And I knew that in order to do that, I was going to have to start growing my community. I didn't know how. I didn't know why I was doing it fully. Again, we have to take steps that we don't know why we're doing. When we have an intuition to do something, a lot of times we need to do it. So I had this intuition, okay, I need to build this community. So about 5 years ago, I started building a email list. What most people just say, it's an email list. And I think what makes me different than a lot of people is I don't treat them and I don't look at them like an email list. If you want to be a bro marketer and you want to just, affiliate the crap out of people, that's by all means do that. That is not what I'm about. I'm about building a community for people. And one of the things that I always tell people is treat your email list like a bank account. Never withdraw more than you deposit. Because you're dead. If they're going to close your account if you do, right? It's gone. So, and by what I mean by that is never ask for anything from your group, from your email list, without depositing value into them first. So my whole goal, literally for the first 2 years of growing my list, again, I didn't have a product out. I didn't have anything out that I was trying to sell. I just knew I had to grow my list. So when I did have those things, that I could tap into something that I already had. I didn't have to go out and build that. I didn't want to, have the stuff built and then go and have to build the list. Like I didn't want to have a product and say, oh, crap, now what do? I built it. This isn't Field of Dreams. I don't build it and they come. It's like I've got to have this in there. So I started building it, and for 2 years, I just added value to my list. I did not sell. I did not do anything. So I do things really backwards of what most people do. My list now is over 170,000 subscribers. And again, I try to add as much value as I can and only ask when I need to for sales of things, for something that I'm offering, a product of mine. I don't really do affiliates. I do some partnerships, but again, I've got to have involvement in whatever I do to my list. That's what they expect. They don't want me selling them a widget, next week, and then the following week I'm going to sell them a completely different widget.
So the way you describe email on your website and in social is as a community, and people are accustomed to Facebook communities. They're accustomed to online communities in places like Circle and Kajabi and Heartbeat and things like that. Email is often seen as very sort of one directional. I, as the list owner, transmit.
Yep.
What's your definition of an email community? Because for me, I think this is really important.
Yeah. So for me, when I talk about community, yes, and I get replies back. It's just the mechanism that I'm using for the community. Here's the thing. Any social media community, I don't care what you have it on, is rented space, especially things like Facebook and Instagram and actual social media stuff. When you get on to like Circle or other platforms, it's a little bit different. You kind of control a little bit more. But social media is rented space. You can get booted off at any time. I've had people with several 100,000 followers and they've been banned, and it's like you lose. That was their only means of communication, and they lost their company. They had no more company because they lost that social media. And two, the whole game of social media for them is to make money. They're there to make money. And what they see you, I don't care if it's a community, I don't care if it's a post, I don't care what it is. If they see you trying to promote something off there, like you're going to have a workshop, you're going to do this, you're selling this, you're doing this, they either aren't going to show it to people or they're going to want you to pay for it. They want you to buy ads. They want you to boost. They want you to do these things. You have no control of who sees your stuff when. And that's the biggest thing. You have no control. With email, I know precisely that you are going to get that email. I can't make you read it, and that's where the community comes in. By giving you value every time I send you email, you want to open that email. So my open rate on my email is anywhere between 45 and 65% on every single email that I send out, which I had no idea was good or bad until I started working with these other, because I did this just out of intuition. It's like, I know I need to do this. I don't know if it's any good. But after talking with people like in Russell Brunson's group, and it's like, they're like, what do you mean you're getting 45 to 60? I'm like, don't you? And they're like, no, we get 10 to 12. I'm like, you're doing something wrong, because you should be getting way higher, open rate than that. So by having an email list, you control it. It's your asset. You own that. No one can take it away. You could down my website. You can ban me from every social media platform. You could take away every single one of my programs. And within a week, I could have something going out to my community and make $20,000, $30,000 and be okay. I'm okay. My company is my list. My company is my list. So I treat them that way.
So as somebody who's grown an email list authentically and organically, what advice would you have for anybody listening who's thinking, okay, I want to grow my email list? What are some of the most effective methods that are not paid, more organic methods of building your email list?
Well, there's several organic ways to build your email list. So one of the things that I do is I run ads, but it's never for a paid product. I only run ads for my free stuff to get into my community. So adding value. So to me, there's two big things that I do. So one is, and I'm talking about like $5 a day ads. I'm not talking about a huge amount of money. So my ads right now are averaging about 3 to 6 cents per click. So every 3 cents, I'm getting someone to my opt-in page to download it. So, and about 25% of those actually opt in. So I'm for, less than 20 cents, I'm getting people into my community. That's where my job comes in. When I get them in my community, they need to be felt heard. They need to be felt like they're there for a reason, and I need to start providing them value. So that's when the value starts going to them. That's one way. The other way is good SEO. In other words, if you go to like Google right now and you type in Think and Grow Rich Challenge, I will have the number 1 and 2 spot normally. It costs me nothing. It's all SEO. Even Russell Brunson, he did his Think and Grow Rich Challenge, had me, I was one of the speakers on that event for him, because I basically own that. I mean, it's like you go there. If you go in and type Tony Robbins and Think and Grow Rich, I'm going to be right there with Tony Robbins on his on the Google. And that's only because of SEO. It doesn't cost any money. It doesn't. So that's a good organic way. Find out where your potential customers, where your potential community resides. What are they looking at? And figure out ways, be creative. So creativity is probably the number one skill that we need as entrepreneurs, is to be creative, be resourceful, find ways of what they're looking for, seed yourself into it. I'm literally stealing people from Tony Robbins' group every day because they're searching for it.
I think what's really interesting is, from what you're describing there, is there are no rules. The only rules are what works. And treat your email list like a bank account. Nobody says this. I mean, probably some people do. But most of the email marketing gurus that you will meet will tell you never send an email without an offer.
Yeah.
Similarly, most people in the Facebook ad space would never run a Facebook ad simply at a lead magnet and not have anything ready to sell off the back of it. But building that intentional email list, that community, it is like an awful lot of the things you're doing. It's small investments today for big wins tomorrow.
Yep.
Whether that's tiny micro adjustments to your mindset or very concrete things around marketing, they compound up over time. And I think anything to do with vision, anything to do with the whole Napoleon Hill ecosystem, it's all about the small actions over time adding up to massive effects. So I think people should pay close attention to what you're saying there.
Yeah. And you know, what you said there is, so I had this vision for how I wanted to operate in the future. Like I had my vision of here's how I literally picture myself on a beach being able to run this stuff and not have too much going on, just enjoying life and doing what I want to do. Had this vision. I didn't know how. I didn't how myself, like how is it going to work? I just started doing it. And the dividends, the compounding interest dividends of what I built was beyond what I even imagined. So I never even looked at it beyond some of the stuff that I was doing. But as I took action, I started seeing things. So one of the things that I saw was, I worked with Russell Brunson on some of his stuff. And I didn't realize, and only because it was in very good alignment, he's starting a Secrets of Success. He's starting this thought movement company, which is a very wonderful company. And I thought, okay, I can get behind that because it is 100% alignment with what my audience needs and what my audience wants. And it's in alignment for them. It's not for me. This is something that would benefit them. And come to find out, from that stuff, I blew every one of his guys away. All of his the people that are in ClickFunnels, I don't use ClickFunnels. It's like I blew all of them away, and some of them were angry that I was an outsider that came in and just did this. And I'm like, well, that's just how you do it, right? I never saw until this last 12 to 18 months really the true value of building this community. It's beyond what I even thought. It's got me on stages. I was just in New York doing a huge talk for the Trailblazers, which is this big thing. I was on the billboard of Times Square with from that event. All of this because of my community. And again, I never envisioned that stuff when I was remembering my future for what I wanted my company to look like. It's looking like that. I just did a rollout for the Think and Grow Rich Challenge with Russell Brunson. I did it. I was on a 2-week trip with one of my best friends in Turkey. I was literally on the beach in the morning looking at an email sequence to go out to my community, send. I blew that one and I don't want to brag. It's like, but I completely tore. There was some big names that were promoting that Think and Grow Rich Challenge. I was the number one by far. And it's like, and I was doing it from the beach.
Well, I think the overall takeaway here, and this is why I feel people should get into your world, is if your vision is just to be successful, then be careful what you wish for, because it comes in many forms and you may not like what you get. The power of intention and being really clear on what that looks like, and not letting other people's limitations hold you back from what that could be. Your version of success, if anybody were to go to a parent and say, this is what I'm aiming for, they would say that's not reasonable.
Yeah.
But you get what you wish for in many respects, or you get what your intention is set upon. So be intentional. If people want to get into your world, Sean Osborne, how can they make that happen? What does working with you look like, and how can they get on your email list? And
so, yeah, there's many ways to, the best thing to do is just go to thinkingbigcoaching.com. I've got many different resources on there, free resources. You can get to my thinkingbigpodcast.com as well. You can get to it from either one, but those are two great ones. And so some of the things that I'm doing now are I do mastermind groups. So again, who you hang out with is who you become. And I've put these mastermind groups together in a way that brings together great people that are diverse, not in the same fields, not in the same, it's not a marketing, mastermind. It's not a copywriting mastermind. It's not a technology mastermind. It is a mastermind group it's it's a success mastermind, no matter what it is that you're wanting for success. So that's one of the ways that I work. And then I obviously do workshops and things like that. I'll have my book out. I'll have, so there's many things going on that you can get involved in. If you, one of the things that I have on my site is I'm a certified Tony Robbins coach, and I have the 6 human needs quiz. I'm able to do the quiz. So if you take the quiz, to me, one of the first things we need to understand is what's driving the decisions that we make. Why am I choosing to go this way instead of this way? Why am I making this decision? And by knowing what your driving need is, whether it's growth, whether it's, whatever yours is, there's 6 of them. Knowing that is such a big thing to help you understand why I'm making these decisions and why is it holding me back. So in other words, if growth is your driving need, you are a go-getter. You do these things. But the downside is sometimes you leave your loved ones behind. Sometimes you don't, you're focusing so much on growth that you're not focusing on other things. So it shows you what your blind spots might be and what your positives, what your magic is based on what your driving need is. So it's a free quiz that you can get in and do.
Sounds really good. When the book is ready, I would love to have you back and really burrow into that once I've had a chance.
Absolutely. It's going to be it's many years in the making, but I'm truly rewriting it. I want it to be a good book that absolutely helps people. I'm not just gonna AI a book out and chat GPT a book out and hey, here's a book. That's not it's if it doesn't absolutely help people, it's not going out to the public.
Well, Sean, I need to ask you the one question I try and remember to ask everyone. What's one thing you do now that you wish you'd started 5 years ago?
Growing my community. I'm telling you this, I've now started that and I'm doing it now. But if I could have started that even 5 years ago, the number one thing for me, for anybody that's in entrepreneurship, it really doesn't matter, is start growing your community. Whether it's your own community, being a part of community, masterminds, be in a community of great people, grow your community. You will have the resources you need to do anything that you want.
That is an awesome answer. Sean, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. And it's been great to be here, Bob.
So for you at home, that does bring us to the end of another episode. If you have enjoyed this show, then you will love the Personal Brand Business Roadmap. It's everything you need to remove the confusion from building, marketing, or monetizing your expert business. Just visit amplifyme.agency and follow the instructions on the intrusive pop-up that you can't avoid. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.